Good evening and welcome to Facebook Live Fridays at 5. This is Sex Addiction in the News. I'm Stacy Sprout and I am broadcasting from my phone in this moment. You'll notice a different angle because a minute before I was set to broadcast, my computer just quit working. Just quit. I tried to restart it and it won't. So, life on life's terms. I'm going to be seeing how this goes holding my phone. Oh, my stars. Life is so interesting, isn't it? Okay. Well, I definitely want you to be able to see the screen more than me, but we'll see how this goes. So I'll start over. This is April 20th, 2018 edition of Sex Addiction in the News. And as I said, I'm broadcasting from Seattle, Washington. I'm Stacy Sprout, licensed psychotherapist, certified sex addiction therapist, and author of my own story titled Naked in Public, a memoir of recovery from sex addiction and other temporary insanities. There's the book there. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. And thank you also for the feedback that I'm getting. I have said a prayer about this broadcast, just asking for feedback about what, is it something I should keep doing? Is it valuable? And so when I get feedback from viewers, it's really affirming and helpful for me. And I got a very special email this week, which was an answered prayer, which I am going to tell you about later in the broadcast. So I created this broadcast because I am passionate about destigmatizing the conversation about sex addiction. So those afflicted, whether it's an individual, a couple, a family, or a community, can get help now. The show is intended to be educational, and it's for anyone who's interested in what the world is saying about sex addiction. I'll be checking the live feed at the end of the show if there's any comments or questions and responding. Tonight I wanted to share a quote before I started. So I do get some questions about why I started the show. Oh, here's Sparky Sprout. Hello, Sparky. Now that I have my phone, I can do some interesting camera angles. Anyway, why did you do the show, or what does it mean to you? And I wanted to share a quote from Dr. Carl Jung, who is a well-known pioneer in the field of psychology, that was informative to me in terms of reflecting how I felt in starting the show. And what does it mean to be broadcasting in a live way that people can access from all over the world at their leisure, talking about sex, love, and porn addiction recovery. And so here's the quote, and I'll say a little more afterward. Loneliness does not come from having no people about one, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself, or from holding certain views which others find inadmissible. And what that means to me is, for most of my life, I was silent about the things that were most important to me. And that's the community I was born into. And so getting to be part of making a community where we can talk about something like sex, porn, and love addiction recovery makes me feel not so lonely. And I know there's a lot of people out there that can relate to that, because addiction is a very lonely affliction. Whether you have it or someone you love has it, it's very lonely and isolating. So just the ability to talk about this and share what other people are talking about is incredibly valuable. So, okay, I bet the sound is different since this is not running through my computer. Yeah, well, I hope you can hear me okay. And let me just check my computer here. Yep, it's still stuck. Oh well, we're gonna do it this way. So without further ado or fussing, let's go to our headline story. Our headline news, and you see that, this evening features Jennifer Lewis in a story from People magazine from last year titled, Oh, you can hear me fine. Thank you. Thanks for that feedback. Now, can you see, is is the picture backwards? Because on my phone it's backwards, but that's probably because I'm watching it through the phone. So I'm anticipating. I'm wondering, can you see that forward? You can see it backwards. Oh no, this is not going to work. Oy vey. Let's see. I wonder if I can. I'm going to try to. I tried to shut down my computer and it just wouldn't. It wouldn't shut down. I wonder if I can turn this around. Okay, now I can't see what you can see, but I'm out of there. Now you can see it forward. Okay, let's try it this way. Okay, so you won't see me, but you will rotate your phone. You can't turn your phone while recording. Oh, okay, I gotta back up. Sorry, Sparky. This is kind of crazy. Sorry, sweetie. Let me set you down there. Okay. Jennifer Lewis is the headline from People magazine, and it reads, cancel. Sorry about that. Blackish grandma Jennifer Lewis opens up about her battle with sex addiction and bipolar disorder. Jennifer Lewis is not one to hold anything back. We are as sick as our secrets, so I tell everything, says the 60-year-old singer and actress who lived with an undiagnosed bipolar and a sex addiction throughout her 20s. Now starring in the ABC sitcom Blackish, Lewis, who proudly says she's worked as the mom of every black actor in the business, is revealing her journey to a happier, healthier life in her memoir, The Mother of Black Hollywood. Excerpted exclusively in People magazine. Lewis writes in her memoir that her sex addiction really kicked in when she moved to New York City after college and found success on Broadway. So, performing on Broadway was a rush, she says. The applause coming over the footlights was like a tsunami in slow motion. The crash after the show, I assure you, is just as intense. Let's just say that post-show I had sort of a habit of sex serving as a nightcap. As the years progressed, her undiagnosed bipolar symptoms worsened, and by 1989 she was heavily self-medicating with alcohol and addiction to sex. Eventually she sought help, and her therapist Rachel diagnosed her as having bipolar disorder. Sorry for the moving camera there, folks. Had her therapist said, "You're crazy," Lewis said, I would have agreed. I had been crazy all my life, she writes. When she said mental illness, I thought, "B, you crazy." I associated mental illness with people who couldn't function, with straitjackets. I certainly knew what a depressive mood was, but this other manic part was new. When Rachel explained the details, I gasped. You mean there's a name for describing why I talk fast and walk fast and rage, doodling, the berating, why I create drama and speed when I drive a car? Compulsive, you say? The doodling, braiding, and unbraiding my hair, the arguing with people and storming off, kicking S, throwing S. Yeah, okay, I guess all that describes me, she said. Just as alcoholism isn't really about the liquor, my addiction wasn't really about the sex. It was about the unresolved psychological problems that caused me pain. Sex was simply my painkiller, she writes. At 50, Lewis decided to open up about her sex addiction and bipolar diagnosis in a one-woman show, Bipolar, Bath, and Beyond. She also talked about her journey on an episode of Oprah. And I'll add that Oprah has an audience of 60 million people, so that is very courageous of Jennifer Lewis. She also published a memoir of her life called Jennifer Lewis, the Mother of Black Hollywood. And that is our book of the week, so I'll talk more about that later. She writes, I saw the show as an opportunity to perhaps help someone with bipolar disorder find their way out of the darkness. I felt it was my responsibility. Stigma, fear, and just plain ignorance about mental illness, particularly among African Americans, has taken a terrible toll on our families and communities. But with therapy and a medication regimen that works for her, She said, "I have peace of mind now. I'm in my skin. It took years to get to that place, but I did it, and I have a smile on my face." So I'm going to turn this here. Let's see. For me, let's see. Okay. There's that. I'm trying to get my face on the camera there, but it's hard to tell. I just want to say that I love so much about this story. She's courageous. She said, she has a quote, "I'm just grateful to get to represent the middle-aged African-American woman because we are a mighty powerful people." I find her incredibly inspirational. Even the headline in the story, she just is very open about her battle with sex addiction and bipolar disorder. And she teaches us that sex addiction is not simply an affliction of white, the young, the male. Older Black mothers and grandmothers can be at risk too, along with people of all colors, races, ethnicities, and different ages. So, thank you, Jennifer Lewis, for that story. I don't know if I'm going to continue this way, but I'm going to try. I'm going to just say a little prayer here for guidance. If you have any strategies, reader or viewers, please let me know. But in the meantime, we'll go back to the screen. Oh, this is the best view. Okay, well, I at least want you to see the headlines. Partners and Families News. This is a story from ABC News titled "Wives of Sex Addicts Seek Support After Suffering in Silence" by Susan Donaldson James. Okay, so let's come back to, there you go. So in this story, unlike most stories I feature on the show, this story is not current in terms of date. It's actually from 2011, September 27th, but the stories are just as relevant to today. And the truth is, it's just really hard to find stories in the media about partners and families of sex addicts, at least at this time. And there's good reasons for that. People are protective of their privacy, but there's also a lot of shame and stigma. And so this one is excellent, and I'm happy to share it with you. Here's some excerpts. Michelle, a 57-year-old marketing professional from Colorado, suffered for years in silence and humiliation as her husband's sex addiction extended to pornography, cross-dressing, and emotional affairs with other women. Though it seems counterintuitive, her husband of 36 years was an intimacy anorexic, withholding from her both physical sex and emotional affection. "We were like roommates," said Michelle, who didn't use her real name in the story. "Sex was very mechanical, unemotional, and infrequent. We lived totally separate lives in the same house. Until I knew better, I thought it was me. She said I wasn't pretty enough, or my boobs were not big enough, or I was too fat or too skinny. My self-esteem was gone, and I thought I was responsible." Wives of sex addicts are a lonely and neglected group, according to Doug Weiss, a psychologist and executive director of the Heart to Heart Counseling Center in Colorado Springs, Colorado, in the U.S. Weiss has studied more than 100 partners who, like Michelle in this story, struggle with their self-esteem and sexuality. He found that 82% experienced depression, 62% dealt with an eating disorder, and 39% were, as a result of their husband's intimacy anorexia, also withholding love and affection. Many of these women have had partners who have been cheating for 15 to 20 years, said Weiss. Up to 80% of the men who are sex addicts have been abused as children, the story reports. And as an aside, some other research puts that figure even higher. They go into the world broken, and their marriages are broken. More than a third, quote, can't do intimacy. They control with silence and shame to intentionally isolate themselves. Michelle said she knew her husband was a sex addict before she married him, but, quote, I did not understand addiction. Growing up in a large family with a mother who was ill most of the time, Michelle said, to this day, I struggle with feeling I did not get enough love. My self-esteem was kaput, she said. I also got a lot out of the relationship because we were like ships passing in the night. I was free to be totally unaccountable. I could spend money as much as I wanted and go to parties. I was able to do anything I wanted. It's the bribe. She finally realized something was wrong when their daughter, then in middle school, and looking for printer paper in the family office, found her father's stack of porn magazines. That was the breaking point, said Michelle. I confronted him, and his response was to get mad at her, that she shouldn't be looking through his things. After other pornography incidents, Michelle demanded a separation, but her husband continued to blame her. Eventually, he agreed to try therapy. About her husband's recovery, Michelle said, "He's come a long way to being much more able to be emotionally intimate and understand and care about my needs. Things are better than they have ever been." And that took some time, of course. And she says, many women who come to group, a support group for partners of sex addicts, need to know that with both partners in recovery, the chances for their marriage healing is great, she said. I love telling the women that come to our group that there is hope. Some can actually make it through this. I did. So that's a great story about a married couple and how they struggled, especially at first, but eventually saw recovery and progress. That's a classic example of blame shifting, where you're addressing someone's issue, like finding pornography that was secret, and they get mad at you for looking through their things instead of addressing the issue of the pornography and a child finding it. So I'm so glad for that couple that they found recovery. Next up, in our LGBTQ and sex addiction feature, I found an article called The Reality of Bisexuality by Robert Weiss. And I had a viewer comment last week that when I showed a link and information about the transgender certification program, that didn't really have anything to do with sex addiction. And that was true. It wasn't about transgender people who are struggling with sex addiction. But the link was that it was the first of its kind that I've been able to find anywhere. And part of healing from sexual addiction is sexual health. And so I just wanted to showcase that as an opportunity for transgender education for therapists. And this is another education piece about bisexuality. So it's also by a certified sex addiction therapist, Rob Weiss. And he is an openly gay man. And again, I feel it's helpful as an educational tool. It was for me. I'm learning a lot by producing these shows. And I think I also wanted to include it because a lot of the news, for example, that last story, is what's called heteronormative. In other words, there's an assumption or a bias toward heterosexuality, and people who are in sexual minorities are not really mentioned. So they just have to adapt the story. So I think there's a need to share more diversity of sexual expression and how couples are created and made up. Part of the sex addiction prevention is to make sure that therapists don't mistake sexual differences for sexual problems. And in that spirit, thanks to Rob Weiss, the article highlights some keys to offering therapy to bisexual individuals. So there's just 4 keys that he talks about. So first, the definition of bisexuality. To be a bisexual man or woman means having a personally significant and meaningful romantic and/or sexual attraction to both males and females. So the 4 points are, number 1, as a therapist or helping professional, it's important to help clients who may be struggling with sexual identity concerns to examine both their sexual behaviors and, perhaps more importantly, their emotions, their feelings. 2, the goal is to put these clients in touch with their core sexual selves so that they can so you can help them feel comfortable with who they are and what they truly desire. If a client is pretending to be something that he or she is not, that client is likely to experience shame and self-loathing as a result. And now it looks like my phone battery is dying. So I'll get as far as I get, and then I'll call it a day today. Let's make sure it's still okay, going. Okay. Third, a client who is comfortable with his or her self-identified sexual orientation, but engaging in sexual activity does that not mesh with that, will also experience shame and self-loathing. So the work here is to help such clients learn to integrate their sexual orientation, fantasies, and behaviors. In other words, to bring their whole self into alignment, thereby evolving a more healthy, hopeful, and holistic human being, regardless of what turns them on. And finally, and this piece was particularly touching for me, just learning about it, to fully identify as bisexual is, by its very nature, a grief issue. As the man or woman who is truly physically and romantically attracted to both sexes will always be missing one or the other if he or she should choose to become monogamous with any one person. Bisexuals may love a man or a woman, be sexual with a man or a woman, and enjoy all the fruits of either of these choices, but ultimately they cannot have it all if they wish to be in a long-term, intimate, monogamous relationship. Therefore, on some level that most of us do not fully share, bisexuals are often left to wonder about, long for, and even miss the experience that they don't get to have because they've decided, at least for that time, to choose one over the other. So I appreciate this caring approach to the unique situation of people with bisexual attractions, so thank you to Rob Weiss for that. In Sex Addiction and Religion, we feature an April 12, 2018 story from LifeSite News by Claire Traitain. I'm sorry, Claire, if I mispronounce your name. Titled 7 Porn Recovery and Chastity Groups You Didn't Know Existed. Now, if you've ever watched this show before, you know that I would have these little fly-ins, but I'm not going to show you that. And I'll just tell you them. And then I'll post this video on YouTube, and I'll attach all of the links to these groups so that you can click on them if you're interested and look them up yourself. Now, before I go into that, I want to add that my perspective on sexual compulsion is that from a psychological and human rights perspective, not a religious perspective. However, many of the people who either watch this show or may be watching it or are out in the world do come from a religious perspective. And so they're looking for resources in language that relates to them and their faith. So I am an LGBTQ ally, and some of these links have language that does not share my values. Yet, again, for some viewers, they may find help from these sites. So I'm choosing to include them, and I'll ask that everyone just follow their heart on what they think might be helpful for them or not. The author of this story reminds us of programs like Fortify and Covenant Eyes that are designed to help people overcome porn addiction, or Covenant Eyes has accountability software, and then goes on to describe these additional resources. So number 1 is the Women United Recovery Coalition, and that's CEO Lacey Bentley runs an 8-week online recovery program through which women work together to free themselves from porn. Women United helps them quit, and through a private video chat meeting with others, so connects them. Lacey also has a new book out, and I will tell you about how you can get a free copy at the end of this segment. Pure Desire Ministries is a Protestant group that offers clinical counseling and support groups, founded by Dr. Ted and Diane Roberts, because they recognize the pervasiveness of sexual struggle in the church. That's what it says on its website. Number 3 is called Changing Lanes, and that is another Protestant porn and sexual recovery ministry. Changing Lanes online support groups are a safe, relational, and authentic community to heal in your journey through porn and sex addiction. Number 4, Dirty Girls Ministries. This Christian group has its name for 2 reasons. The first is actually to target people, specifically women, who are searching for pornography online. The second reason for the name is because women who struggle with porn often say it makes them feel dirty. And the founder of this organization has written a book called Dirty Girls Come Clean. Here is the book. You see that? I have read this book, and it provides practical and spiritual advice, and features testimonies of women who have broken free from porn addiction. And my experience of reading it, I did have some grief come up because I recognize just the loneliness and isolation in those stories. I remembered feeling that way. I'm so grateful that I don't feel that way now, but that is often the case for people who are secretly using porn compulsively, as they feel very lonely. So I recommend that book for especially for Christian women, but for I think many, many women can benefit from reading it. Heroic Virtue Warfare Institute is the 5th resource on this list. This ministry provides members of the military with Catholic resources on chastity and the dangers of porn. It also provides those in the military with what they call a smart pack of resources for overcoming addiction to pornography. Number 6, Beggar's Daughter. This is another book that I've been reading. And this is written by Jessica Harris, who founded this group. Harris was exposed to pornography at age 13 and was addicted to it during her teenage years. Through Beggar's Daughter, Harris raises awareness about the harms pornography can cause women and the fact that women, like men, can be addicted to it. This is her, Beggar's Daughter is the name of the organization, but it's also the title of her memoir. And she speaks on college campuses and at churches reaching out to women. And the 7th is called Freedom U. Freedom U helps consumers of commercial sex, especially men who view porn or hire prostitutes, to, quote, live in freedom from compulsive and detrimental sexual behavior. So, as I said, I will include all of those links on my YouTube channel, which this Facebook post will be transferred, so the video will be on YouTube, and you can click on them if you're interested. In Sex Addiction Around the World, we have a story published this week from a media outlet called hivisasa.com, which is a publication from Kenya, Africa. And some excerpts from this story, which are about porn addiction. And just let me hold on here. I just want to read you the title of this story. It's called 4 Weird Things That Can Happen to Your Body When You Watch Porn. And it says, there are people who are ever watching porn. Porn addiction is real. There are different ways porn can affect you. Besides breaking your marriage, porn affects your body in various ways. Here are 4 weird things that can happen to your body when you watch porn. Back up a little. Number 1, a brain effect. According to The Guardian, a Cambridge University neuropsychologist, Dr. Valerie Voon, states that porn affects different parts of your brain. Persons who are ever watching porn are likely to end up being addicted in the long run. Porn, number 2, messes up your memory. According to Christian Leyer of the University of Germany, in the University of Germany, men who love watching porn tend to have memory interruption. Number 3, the article says, you will feel less attracted to your partner. Porn can ruin your relationship. Men and women who watch porn are less attracted to their partners. Sorry, there's some construction next door. They usually stop at 5 o'clock, but they're working late today. Everything is going on. Let's see. He or she will not find reasons for making love to you because he or she is ever watching porn. Porn lovers find satisfaction from watching these videos and pictures during their free time. And the 4th point, according to the article, you will need more intense images. When you start watching porn daily, your brain will start desiring more intense things. You will want to see more hardcore content. I've said this before on this show, but I continue to find resources of openly talking about sex or porn addiction in countries outside the U.S. So it was pretty cool to see that story from Kenya, Africa. And our sex addiction book of the week this week, as I mentioned earlier in our headline news, is the title, Jennifer Lewis, the Mother of Black Hollywood. And here's the book description. From her more than 300 appearances for film and television, stage and cabaret, performing comedy or drama, as an unforgettable lead or a scene, stealing, supporting character, Jennifer Lewis has established herself as one of the most respected, admired, talented, and versatile entertainers working today. This mega diva and co-star of the hit sitcom Blackish bears her soul in this touching and poignant and at times side-splittingly hilarious memoir of a Midwestern girl with a dream, whose journey took her from poverty to the big screen and along the way earned her many accolades. With candor and warmth, Jennifer Lewis reveals the heart of a woman who lives life to the fullest. This multi-talented force of nature landed her first Broadway role within 11 days of graduation from college, and later earned the title Reigning Queen of High Camp Cabaret. In the audaciously honest voice that her fans adore, Jennifer describes her transition to Hollywood, and I'm going to and cementing her status as the mother of Black Hollywood. When an undiagnosed mental illness stymied Jennifer's career, culminating in a breakdown while filming The Ten Temptations, her quest for wholeness becomes a harrowing and inspiring tale, including revelations of bipolar disorder and sex addiction. Written with no-hold-barred honesty and illustrated with more than 40 color photographs, this gripping memoir is filled with insights gained through a unique life that offers a universal message. Love yourself, so that love will not be a stranger when it comes. I'm not going to hold up the book, but again, one more woman stepping out and acknowledging her sex addiction and talking about what she did to get better. One more announcement before we end the show tonight, which is I'm excited to announce, as I did last week, but the first ever event at the International Institute of Trauma and Addiction Professionals Phoenix Annual Symposium, which is a conference to train certified sex addiction therapists around the world. And when that gathering takes place, there will be an open public event on Friday evening, the 4th of May. The time was changed. It's 7 to 9 p.m., and it will be held at the Regency Hotel, and I'll include a link to the page when I post this on the YouTube channel so you can get all the details, or I also have the event listed on my Facebook channel. And it's going to be a presentation of an author, Erica Garza, talking about her memoir, Getting Off. It'll be clips from the film Charlene de Guzman's that she wrote and starred in called Unlovable. And afterward, there's going to be a panel discussion with Marnie Faree, who is, by all accounts, a pioneer in the field of speaking out about her own sexual recovery and carrying the message to others. And I feel blessed and fortunate to get to be on the panel too. So I hope you can join us there. And as I said last week, I'm excited to announce that I will be having a sex addiction in the news broadcast on that evening, Friday, and I will be having Erica and Charlene on the show, along with Amy from Worth Recovery, Amy Smith. And I'm also excited to say that I've heard today that there's some special guests who are coming into town for that event. One woman I know from out of state, and 2 women coming from in-state, but driving some distance to get there. And so perhaps it will serve as a gathering place for women. So I want to invite anyone who's interested to get in touch with me, and we will figure out how to connect. Perhaps people can come and attend the broadcast that we do. It'll be at the symposium there. It'll be at 5 p.m. that Friday evening. Or I've also been talking about the possibility of a women's only sexual recovery meeting, sex, love, and porn addiction support meeting in the morning of Saturday after the evening event on the 4th, so it's Saturday the 5th. So stay tuned for more details about that, but get in touch with me if you want to be notified. And that is our broadcast tonight. Thanks for hanging in there with me. These have been the most interesting technical difficulties I've experienced so far, with my computer completely quitting, so broadcasting from my phone. And I will say that I'm always seeking stories about sex addiction in the public news to provide hope for recovery on the show. If you see a story you think is appropriate, please either Facebook message me or send it to nakedinpublicnews at gmail.com. Together, we can get out the news about what the world is saying about sex addiction. So, I'm not going to look at the live feed because I have to turn the phone around. So I'm just going to say thank you so much for watching the show tonight. And if you like the video and you're watching on YouTube, you can subscribe and click the little bell for notifications on new shows. And please feel free to leave comments or, yeah, because it's meaningful for me to hear what people are thinking, and I'm always open to suggestions as well. So, in closing, I'm so glad my little phone held out here. May you feel loved, may you feel cherished, and may you love and cherish others. This is Stacy Sprout signing off from Sex Addiction in the News, and thank you. Good night.